난 알아 달콤한 love song 맹세한 말도 돌아서면 결국 낯선 그 someone Sorry I'm an anti-romantic 달아나고 싶어 저 멀리 이미 널 줬는 내 맘이 작은 불씨로 타올라
Atsumu and Oikawa Body Swap PT3. Hello everyone, I know you may be confused because I said that I was giving up on this series. But recently I've regained some of the inspiration that had pushed me to start this in the first place, and I'd like to use this to my advantage and not let it go to waste. So, I'm writing part 3. Now, I want to make it abundantly clear that this is in no way a promise. For part 4, who knows, I may not even finish this part and nobody will even read it. But I'm gonna try my best to deliver. It may take a long time, but I'll try my best. Okay, on to the story. To play. Everything he did was to play. Every pain he'd hide to play. Every smile he'd force to play. Every nap he'd sacrifice to play. It was all so he could play. Oikawa's life revolved, not even that, was ruled by volleyball. He had devoted his life to the sport, from the very moment he had seen it on TV. From the very moment he joined his middle school's volleyball team out of sheer curiosity. From the very moment he won his first setter award. Oikawa Toru lived and breathed volleyball. So when he got news from his doctor that he may never play again, his heart shattered right then and there into a million pieces. Damn his stupid knee for straining so easily, damn his natural clumsiness that he had hidden so well behind a thick wall of charm. But most importantly, damn himself for pushing his body so far past the breaking point. Collecting the shattered pieces of his heart off the floor, Oikawa fought his poor doctor to no end, begging him to report it as a minor injury. The doctor, only trying to do his job, has initially declined to place such a big lie on an official report. But perhaps he had a soft spot for Oikawa, perhaps he just couldn't resist the sadness of his puppy dog eyes, or perhaps he too suffered an injury that had ended his athletic career, as well. Or maybe it was just that everyone who had ever met Oikawa knew that in his twisted mind, he was nothing without volleyball. So the doctor had reluctantly reported his severe injury as a much smaller one. Guilt seeping into the ink of his pen, Oikawa felt relief wash over him like an enormous tsunami as he was given the okay to play again. From that day on, Oikawa made sure to be in top shape and take care of his knee as well as he could. He also made a point to play seriously and give his best in every single match the Aoba Joshai team played, knowing that any one of them could very possibly be his last. Because in his teenage, undeveloped mind, suffering a lifelong injury was better than sitting out and letting his team down. But Oikawa Toru is the farthest thing from perfect. Inevitably, he'd sometimes find himself staying late after school to practice more than necessary to make up for a mishap during training. But his team always took him out of it. Especially his beloved boyfriend of almost 2 years, Iwaizumi Hajime. They used harsh words, tough love, and sometimes even minimal violence to snap the brunette out of his self-destructive days and remind him that he's perfect just the way he is. God, he loved his team so much. Yeah, idiot. Focus. Atsumu, why aren't ya trying? I'm sorry to say this, but you're incredibly dense. That was amazingly idiotic. Sumu, get your head in the fucking game. This, he didn't love so much. Oikawa knew that country folk were harsher than city folk. He's best friends with Miya Atsumu, for God's sake. But it still hurt when the cruel words hit him deep in his ego like arrows piercing a bare chest. He tried his best not to internalize the insults, knowing full well that Atsumu had thick skin and never let any of the in their eyes playful banter get to his head. But it was hard because even though Oikawa's team were little shits who liked to mess with him, they never insulted him. At least, not like this. He thinks that Inarizaki are pure evil who lead Sumu. Atsumu, look out. Suddenly, Oikawa feels himself being harshly shoved from the right. The shackles of gravity lock onto his wrists and he is dragged to the ground before he has any time to react. His body meets the hard flooring of the gym with a loud thud. Pain immediately manifests where his head had met the floor first, and it shoots down his veins sharply, entrapping his thoughts entirely and forcing him to succumb to the loud silence of his head pounding painfully. He slowly blinks his eyes open, only for his vision to be completely blurry. Head still spinning, Oikawa vaguely feels something rest against his face. Biting back a pain-filled groan, he wonders what had happened. Osamu. Osamu? After his vision finally clears, Oikawa looks up and sees Osamu with his head in his hands with a worried Suna right beside him. In between them lay a volleyball. Starting to piece together the situation, Oikawa feels bad for cursing them before. Osamu looks down and meets Oikawa's gaze, annoyance apparent in his blank gray eyes. The boy reaches down and grabs who he thought was his twin by the jersey and pulls him up on his feet before pushing him back a little bit. Oikawa stumbles but finds his balance and stays standing. "You're an idiot." "Sorry. Guys? Yeah, okay." Aaron asks, running up to them with concern written all over his face. "Ya dash don't ya dare say yes, you're not okay, ya got a massive bruise on ya face. I don't need ya to baby me, Rin." Suna scoffs before shrugging his shoulders and walking away. Oikawa drowns in their tight tension and Aaron coughs awkwardly, obviously feeling it too. "Well kidda went to get an ice pack for your bruise," he spoke, looking at the purple and red swelling on the silver head's forehead. "Are ya hurt in any way?" The boy now turned his attention to Oikawa, looking him up and down for any visible injuries. I'm fine." After school, the road was strangely quiet. The sun had just begun to set. Gold yellow and cherry red hues washed the skies prettily and the distant sound of birds singing harmoniously fade to the background peacefully. Oikawa, Osamu, and Suna walk home slowly, all three of them exhausted from the long day of school that they had to endure. Oikawa notices the way the other two walk with their shoulders pressed against one another, almost as if they were glued together. He doesn't mention it though, not wanting to be the one to break the comfortable bubble of silence that had surrounded them. Arriving at the end of the long street, Osamu and Suna both stop walking and Oikawa quickly copies their actions, trying to seem as natural as possible. The boy's confusion starts to fade as the brunette and Silverhead share a short hug before Suna turns towards Oikawa and smiles at the twins. "See y'all tomorrow." Osamu smiles back. "Bye, Rin." Bye." Oikawa tries his best to not sound weird, but it's clear that he's not doing a good job as his awkward response accidentally turns the entire situation awkward as well. Suna crosses the street and Osamu turns the corner, Oikawa following behind him closely. Now it's just the twins. To say that it is even more awkward than before is an understatement and a half. The silence traps the two in a suffocating bubble of discomfort. Osamu picks up on who he believes to be his brother's strange aura, and Oikawa can tell that he has done this by the way the Silverhead is staring at him, only increasing the weirdness of the situation. Oikawa glances at Osamu from the corner of his eye, hoping not to catch the other boy's gaze, and sees the large white bandage that Kida had practically slapped on his face during practice. Guilt starts to pierce his chest as Oikawa feels conflicting emotions. On one hand, Osamu had taken a hit in the face for him, which makes Oikawa feel happy that he cares about his brother. However, on the other hand, Oikawa feels like he is taking advantage of not only Osamu but everyone that Atsumu knows. Osamu didn't take the hit for Oikawa, he took it for Atsumu. So, the fact that here Oikawa was standing in Atsumu's shoes made him feel like absolute shit. Hey, thanks for what you did during practice. Oikawa feels as though he should at least thank the boy for what he did, but he found that it didn't alleviate any of the guilt he was feeling. "Ew, don't thank me, that's weird." "Oh, sorry." As they approached the front door of the house, Oikawa hears Osamu sigh. "You're welcome," he mutters before pulling out a key from his pocket, unlocking the door and disappearing inside. Oikawa quickly follows and closes the door behind him before stalking his way back up to Atsuma's room. Upon arriving to the room, Oikawa promptly flops on the bed. He feels exhaustion hit him deeply, as if it was shattering his very bones. The low humming of dull pain is electrical as it fizzles up and down his veins. He then raises his head by an inch or so and sees an innocent enough looking black backpack. Oikawa is immediately reminded of the whole Sakusa thing that Atsumu was begging him to do. Dread immediately fills Oikawa's head and an irritating migraine begins to grow. As if the devil had heard his worries, Atsuma's phone buzzes in his pocket. Pulling it out, Oikawa wants to bury himself in a hole when he sees who had texted him. One message from Omi. "What time do you think you're gonna be here?" He feels himself start to panic. I don't know." "You don't know? Are you okay?" Oikawa has no clue how long it takes to get from Atsuma's house to Sakusa's. Looking at the time, he knows that Atsumu would still be at practice right now, but he still pulls up their private messages and texts him. Oikawa and Atsuma's private chat. "Help me. You said you'd sent his location. He's asking when I'm gonna be. Atsuma's perspective. Running through the green, unkempt field with the rain pouring down fiercely would have been nice if Atsuma's leg didn't hurt like an absolute bitch. Sure, at first he had used it as an excuse to keep suspicion off of him, but now it was a serious nuisance. Atsumu breathes through his nose and continues to endure. He longs to call out to the boys in front of him, pleading them to let him catch his breath. But he knew that was extremely uncharacteristic for Oikawa, who he was currently trying to impersonate. In the long texts they had sent each other, the elder of the two had practically begged the younger to not complain about his knee. Atsumu had already done that 3 times before, so he was definitely not uttering a word about it now. Maybe it was the wet mud slowing him down, or perhaps it was the heavy and drowsy weight of the rain droplets pounding against his head and shoulders. Or maybe it was even his heaving breaths that echoed in his ears, but Atsumu felt himself slowing down even more than before. He was already behind everyone else and now the difference was obvious, humiliating. Then, Atsumu realizes, in the middle of tumbling to the soft ground, that his knee had finally reached its breaking point and caused an immensely painful twitch to pulse throughout his entire leg and force collapse. He felt absolutely useless. This wasn't how he was usually. Usually, he was the Atsumu Mia. Usually, he was the extremely promising, up-and-coming, under-18 setter. Usually, he was the volleyball player who originated from the countryside, predicted to take Japan by storm, predicted to win nationals, predicted to play professionally, predicted to win. Today definitely wasn't usual. Oikawa. Today he was playing pretend, trying to be someone he wasn't, someone who he would never be, someone who was not him, someone he had always looked up to, someone who had more experience than him, someone who could endure the pain thrumming through his knee constantly. He was pretending to be Oikawa Toro. He was not Oikawa Toro. Suddenly, he was thrust into a sitting position, hands gripping tightly to his muddy jersey. Atsumu sees 2 wild eyes burning into him as if they could not possibly look anywhere else. The whites of said eyes are visible from all sides of the emerald iris, connoting concern. Toro, are you okay? His deep voice was hushed against the sound of the rain. His clothes stuck to his body and his hair stuck to his forehead, both of them soaking wet, yet Iwaizumi still managed to look effortlessly charming in the gloomy weather. It makes Atsumu wonder what he looks like. Definitely not like himself. He, with every fiber of his being, longs to say yes, to say I am fine, I just tripped, but Atsumu can feel himself hitting his breaking point. Keeping this act up was so exhausting and he didn't have it in him to continue. So, reluctantly, he shakes his head, muttering a broken no. Then, in an instant, Atsumu was lifted from the ground so effortlessly he had thought he was floating. Iwaizumi had picked him up, and Atsumu, afraid he was about to fall, immediately wraps his legs around his waist. And almost as if the body that wasn't his was moving by itself, Atsumu buries his face into the crook of the other's neck. And it just feels so right that he lets the comfort outweigh the gut-wrenching guilt that had made home in his stomach. Distantly, he hears Iwaizumi tell the others something like, "We're going back to the gym." And then many muted, "Okay. Alright. Yeah, you probably should. Be careful not to slip again." Resound and get quieter as Atsumu feels Iwaizumi begin to walk. He moves at a slow pace as the thunderous weather only worsens. The world seems far away as Atsumu hides in Iwaizumi's neck and is carried as if he weighs nothing at all. He wishes to be in bed, in his bed, back in Hyogo, in the same house as his twin brother, excited to visit his long-distance lover after months of not seeing him. He misses Sakusa and wished it was the curly-haired boy he was so deeply infatuated with and not his best friend's boyfriend carrying him right now. Though, his gestures are greatly appreciated. Minutes fly like seconds and soon the 2 boys are entering the gym through its back doors. The difference between the dull atmosphere and harsh lights would have been jarring, but luckily Atsumu still got his eyes glued shut and his head hidden against Iwaizumi. The black-haired boy keeps carrying him until they get into the changing rooms. Atsumu is gently placed down onto the benches next to Oikawa's belongings and is once again face to face with those almost electric eyes. Iwaizumi bends down so they are at eye level and Atsumu feels his fingertips brush lightly against his knee. Thankfully, the pain is only internal. "Kawa. What happened?" he whispers. Atsumu feels his nose sting in a telltale sign of crying. Iwaizumi looks at him with so much love, even if it is hidden away. even if you have to actively search to find it. That love was not for him. Yet here he was at the receiving end of it. God, it made him feel awful. He didn't realize that the burning behind his eyes had transformed into hot tears that trailed down his cheeks until the elder pulled him into a tight hug. He rubs his back soothingly as his attempt to make Atsumu feel better only made it worse. So much so that he is practically sobbing at the intense imposter syndrome that plagues his entire being. I'm gonna take you home, okay? You don't have to change if you can't. I'll carry all your stuff, so just put your coat on so you don't get sick. Atsumu can only nod along. At home, Atsumu had found a key in Oikawa's pocket that had fortunately unlocked the front door. Iwaizumi had found a note on the fridge explaining the fact that Oikawa's parents had an emergency business trip pop up and had to leave without any warning, and that Oikawa's brother would be staying at his friend's house for the night, so they had the house to themselves. Now, Atsumu sat on the soft bed, eyes red and puffy, wearing some pajamas he had found in the closet. He sniffed loudly, and that's when Iwaizumi enters the room again. All right. I ordered some food, it should be here in half an hour or so. Thanks. Iwaizumi then takes a seat on the side of the bed. He looks troubled, eyebrows slightly arched and mouth molded into a permanent frown. Toro, he says, placing a hand on Atsuma's thigh, lightly caressing the clothed skin. Atsumu knows Oikawa would have been ecstatic about this contact, but the only emotion he feels is discomfort. He tries his best to not let it show, but it's to no avail as Iwaizumi's expression darkens. He doesn't move his hand. Talk to me, what's wrong? Atsumu takes a deep breath. Should he tell him? No. Who knows what could happen if someone else knew? They could be stuck like this forever. Oh, God, what if they already were? He stays silent and Iwaizumi sighs in contained frustration. His grip on the younger's thigh only tightens and Atsumu longs to pull away. The eye contact they share is strained and Iwaizumi looks as if he's contemplating what to do. Then, his gaze falls to Oikawa's soft lips that Atsumu had been chewing on all day out of anxiety and had definitely made dry. He begins to lean in and Atsumu freezes. He feels his heartbeat speed up and that stomach destroyer feeling multiples tenfold. He doesn't know what to do and suddenly doesn't know how to move anymore. Iwaizumi's lips make contact with his and Atsumu wants to cry again. He feels as though he is not only betraying Sakusa but Oikawa as well. And not to mention the fact that he felt like a liar toward Iwaizumi and everyone else today. Atsumu brings his hands up to grab Iwaizumi's shoulders and pull him away. It's like every bad emotion ever identified flashes through those green eyes and Atsumu feels so fucking bad. I need to tell you something, he says before he can chicken out. What? I'm not actually Oikawa. His hand immediately detaches from his thigh and Atsumu feels relief wash over him, but the anxiety that comes next is much more overwhelming. What? What do you? I don't. What do you mean you're not you? Iwaizumi's eyebrows are as knitted as Atsumu has ever seen them and the expression he wears is one of confusion, skepticism, and even a hint of anger. I mean, listen, I don't really get it. I just woke up in this body. I'm actually Atsumu? I texted Oikawa earlier and he's in my body too and he doesn't know how it happened either. We both agreed not to say anything because we didn't know what would happen if we did, but I couldn't hold it back anymore. Atsumu feels himself Babylon and Iwaizumi only looks more confused. You're joking, right? No, I swear to God I'm not. Iwaizumi still looks skeptical, but the raw emotion in Oikawa's, or Atsuma's, he still doesn't get it. Face is enough to convince him. Okay. So you're Atsumu, and I just kissed you. The realization dawns on him and he looks so disgusted that Atsumu almost feels offended, but he doesn't have time to feel that. We were gonna meet up after school, but Omikun and I already planned to meet up and I couldn't let him bail on him since we hadn't seen each other in so long, and wait, so you're saying Oikawa is with Sakusa, right? Now, he should be. Yes. He's with Sakusa. And Sakusa thinks he's you. So he's probably gonna try to do what I just did to you now. Iwaizumi places his head in his hands. He feels as though his head is about to explode right now. So,